The Rebel's Edge. We're going to be describing for you why exactly the tech wreck continues to go down and what might save it or might not right after this on the Rebel's Edge. Bang! Yeah, if I sounded a little out of sorts there, Pete, it was probably because there was some numbnuts on the flight yesterday from San Francisco. Basically the left coast, as people refer to it. At least a lot of people that I know refer to it as the left coast. And this guy gets on the plane, Pete, wearing this freaking helmet that looks like he wants to go into outer space. I mean, take a look at this thing. We were looking when we were, everybody's waiting in line, queued up like usual, right? And then you see somebody wearing something like that. Now, I think you can probably tell, folks, that's a plastic shield over the front. What you don't know is the thing also has two fans in it, Pete. So it's sucking air in. There is sucking air into the helmet and through these HEPA filters. But if you're sitting next to this person, you're hearing and I'm thinking, well, unless you're extremely immune compromised, why would you wear this thing? I mean, again, you're just basically in there with your own filth for a 4-hour flight. And you're sitting there and people sitting next to you are leaning, like, I don't think so.
I'm sorry I'm laughing, but I'm laughing just because it does seem fairly ridiculous. Now, I feel bad for laughing because maybe the guy has some major issue. I'm torn. I'm torn in this whole thing. But I can say this: I have yet to see that, but I have seen recently, John, and I hadn't seen it for a year or two or more. I've seen more masks lately than I recall seeing. So yeah, maybe it's the time of year. Maybe it's where somebody's coming from. I'm in Florida, so there's people from all over the country and world that come here. So I don't know, but that I have never seen that.
Yeah, well, like I say, you either have a real issue with wanting people to look at you, or you're immune compromised, or thirdly, you might just be some sort of a whack job.
Could be.
And you decided, you know what, $400 seems like a deal to me. Let me wear this thing because, I'm not carrying enough stuff on this plane or whatever. You imagine, Pete? And then how about the guy walks through the airport, probably gets into an Uber wearing the same helmet. The Uber driver up front's going, are you planning on setting off a stink bomb or something on this trip?
Yeah, like I said, I go on both sides. I have sympathy for if they're that immune compromised, but still, there's got to be something better.
There is. But welcome to the Rebel's Edge, folks. He is Pete Najarian as usual, and I am John Najarian, still stunned by that climate mask that this guy's wearing, and we're going to bring you the Rebel's Edge, where we, of course, give you macro minute, fantastic futures. We give you our update on Palo Alto Networks, which is crashing right now. But we'll bring you all of that starting right now. All right, Pete, take a look at macro minute. I'm going to say NVIDIA or NVIDIA, however you want to pronounce it, could save the tech wreck that's going on right now, or it could contribute to it. They're looking for hundreds of percent gains, Pete, in the sales side of things. In other words, whatever the numbers were last year, it better be at least 2.5 times bigger, or this thing is going to crater, because it slammed through 700 just a week ago and now is slamming to the downside by better than $60 from the recent high.
Yeah, you're right on that one, John. And I think that CEO understands everything about what this could mean. So he's been pretty open and very bullish for a long time. I would expect him to be still, but any slip up at all, and they've got to be honest, any slip up at all, that could be an issue. For me, John, it's going to be, it's macro. So I'm going to go big time macro. I'm going to go with Germany. they were talking about, the costliness of what's going on in the energy space. They were talking about the high rates. They've talked about the cooling foreign demand for product and all the rest of it. And they just had the GDP. Well, they were looking for 1.3%, John. Now they're expecting 0.2%. They've got some major issues going on, and I think it's something that could have, obviously something that could influence us, or at least the rest of Europe to some degree. I think it's something pretty interesting. We might as well keep an eye on that one because we can only talk about the Fed and NVIDIA so many times. So I had to reach out there, and I went to Germany.
All right. Well, I'm sure the Germans will be watching what happens with NVIDIA too, Pete. Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
I haven't seen the futures, man, for the last couple, but it might go past me too fast, Pete.
He's got the helmet on.
Yeah, we'll have to put a helmet on him, Jared. All right. Let's talk for a moment about interest rates and the 10-year, because it's one of the reasons that the NASDAQ's so weak today, folks, again. And that is we traded through 4.3% for the 10-year again. So I'm saying, Pete, for our CME-sponsored Fantastic Futures, that's why we're watching that.
John, I've brought it up before, but I'm bringing it up for a different reason today. Nat gas. So maybe it's finally bottomed. I'm not saying that it has, but we got all the way down into the 150s. That's the lowest level we've seen since June of 2020. So pretty significant. But today, up about 11%. Last I looked, it was 175. So maybe we have finally kind of shed that and starting to move to the upside. One day does not, or even a half a day, does not make the comeback yet. But it could be, because that was a level that was pretty significant. And I'm going back 4 years ago since we've seen the levels where we are right now. So we're seeing a little bit of a move, 10, 11% to the upside. It's something to keep an eye on. We talk about crude all the time. We talk about nat gas. We talk about energy. But we also see in the unusual option side of things, we've seen a big pickup in energy names over the last week and a half or so.
Yeah, we have, Pete, including that deal with Transocean or Rig. All right, let's talk about, well, first let's tell people that if you don't understand enough about options to actually trade them, and don't trade them before you understand them, folks.
No.
But by all means, check out itsnotanoption.com. Yeah, these are our commercials that are running everywhere right now. It's Not an Option, that book, the #1 business book of 2024. We are seeing fantastic traction with this, our 4th book, and you can claim your free copy. That's right, free copy, by going to itsnotanoption.com. That's itsnotanoption.com. All right, Pete, let's start it off with Palo Alto Network, shall we? Because as I said, top of the show, this thing is cratering. They're lower because they issued weak guidance. Multiple analysts downgrading the stock here. PANW did put up nice revenue numbers, 1.98 billion, Pete. That beat estimates slightly, but guidance, when they offer weak guidance, again, this is a roaring economy, so some people want to tell me all the time, why are so many tech stocks, Pete, starting to warn about people hoarding their cash, whether they're businesses or individuals? Why are they doing that?
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Well, and you can see it today reflected by the 27% down move because of what they're talking about for the future. And one of the things that was mentioned by the CEO on the call, and that's why it's great to look at the numbers. We all look at the numbers, and they're very important, of course. But once you've gotten through the numbers, you always want to hear, well, what is the temperature? What are we looking at right now? Well, the CEO talked about spending fatigue. Probably not the words that a lot of CEOs would want to throw out there. He did. And because of that, you see exactly the direction of this stock right now, down 27%. That is a massive move, John. It literally now, even with this move to the downside, we are talking about a company that's got about a 70 forward PE. So there's a lot of reasons to like this company and the space, cybersecurity. It seems like it would almost have limitless buyers out there. Well, apparently not, because he's talking about the temperature going forward and people with fatigue on some of the buying. That's never a good thing. Guidance, as we always talk about, is the most important part of these earnings calls. Great to know what they've done, but you want to know what they're going to do next quarter and for the year and everything else. And this was something that I think shocked people pretty big.
Certainly did. And boy, this was a market darling. But when you see a 27% drop, think how long it takes usually, folks, for you to put on that kind of weight when you're talking about market capitalization. That's a big drop to lose nearly a third of your value in one session. All right, let's now talk, Pete, about Teladoc, because this one also getting big downgrades today. It was a $20 stock yesterday. Well, it's a $15 stock today. You guys could probably do the math on that, but it's about a 25% drop. And it just keeps going lower, Pete. And there is one Kathy Woods that is probably really stinging right now. And any shareholder in her funds that have this are stinging as well, because this one, Pete, she owns 12% of the company, I believe. That's what I looked at. Of the outstanding shares, she had over 12%. It's one of her bigger holdings, and it's down 87% from the highs that she got in, Pete. So that's pretty damn ugly.
Yeah, this stock is now floating right around the 52-week lows, John. And, you know, they had mixed results on the earnings themselves, but like we just were talking about, we talk about all the time, you know, those are important for us, but then give us the guidance. Well, the guidance was terrible. They were looking to lose about 44 cents. By the way, I said lose, and this is a company that's been around for a while, but they were looking to get, well, maybe down about 44 cents. Here's the numbers. Down somewhere between 45 and 55 cents was the guidance. That ain't so good. And that's a real problem going forward. And at some point, John, some of these companies that we talk about this all the time, when you've been a publicly traded company for, I don't know, a couple of years or more, you might need to start making money at some point in time. That's something that's not really happening just yet. Now, the revenue, by the way, was up. They missed, but it was up 8%. So they did have a pretty daggone decent quarter last quarter. But the problem is going forward, they aren't seeing it. And they're seeing some losses that are a lot bigger than probably expected.
Yeah, it is a difficult time for Teladoc and for Kathy Woods today, no doubt. Yep. All right, Pete, how about Solar Edge Technology, SEDG? This one lower. It's $2 off the low of the day, but it's still down $12 on the day. It's an ugly day for them. What do they do? Solar inverters. So the conversion from that solar through those photovoltaic cells into electricity. That's what these guys do. And apparently people are not parting with their cash for solar as much right now. Just like with EVs, Pete, solar is seeing a little problem here, and that'll become a big problem if they don't have, like SunPower last week, the ability to raise a couple $100 million to get them through this rough patch.
John, and their sales are down 64% year over year. That's not a good number. By the way, their earnings did beat expectations. They only lost 92 cents. They're expected to lose $1.30. But I mean, let's be honest. Honestly, don't you have to figure out how you can make money doing what you're doing? Apparently not. By the way, the cash burn in this one, John, pretty outrageous. It's about $650 million of cash that they burn. And you're down 15%. You're trading closer to $72, somewhere close to that, very near the 52-week lows. By the way, the range, 63 to 339. That's kind of interesting. Well, at 72, obviously there's a problem there. And the Q1 guidance missed. This is not a good quarter for Solar Edge. It's going to be interesting to see how long they can go, John, because honestly, with that cash burn, that's going to become a real problem. And it's probably already starting to become a pretty big problem. They're going to have to do something to get everybody excited about this stock. And I'm not sure if they've got it.
Pete, this one's been around as a publicly traded entity since 2015. So let's give or take, say 9 years. It's 9 years and you're still losing $1 a share.
Wow.
That is, or, 92 cents, like Pete said, that's pretty miserable. Yeah. And that's with government subsidies and everything else, Pete. Even if those subsidies have dropped off a little bit, they're still getting a lot of subsidies. Yeah. So you're losing that much, and the government is trying to prop you up Wow. I don't know how much longer some of these companies are going to be around, Pete.
Mhm.
All right, let's talk about Garmin. Now, Garmin, when I bring it up, I remember back in the day, Pete, this was like a little device, not much bigger than your cell phone. And you'd put it on your dash and it could give you directions to things. This is long before the internet is what it is now. And people using their cell phones and Waze and Google Maps and all the rest. This was one of the ways people did that. Well, they could have gone the way of the dodo bird because of that, because obviously now everybody's using those products that I just described. But these guys expanded. They expanded into the health craze, Pete, because I see a lot of these athletes wearing Garmin watches because it can tell you how far you've run, your pulse. You know, it's a lot like the watch that Apple makes, only much more sophisticated. And they also have, Pete, this new thing for, for fishing, quite frankly. They have radar, that they can scan and tell you where the fish are.
I've seen it.
So this is not just about mapping anymore. And Garmin, there's a reason this one is moving the way it is today, and that's because they've changed with the times.
Yeah, it's been absolutely impressive, John. Matter of fact, after going through this and then looking at the balance sheet and trying to figure out everything about this company, this might be one of the best looking companies I've seen, and sitting at 52-week highs. They've done almost everything you could imagine, right, John? I mean, they hit over almost 138 today, pulled back just a little bit after a nice big run to the upside, but the PE's 20, the free cash flow's over 600 million. They got no debt at all, and they've got cash of about 1.7 billion. That sounds like a pretty good foundation to me. Oh, and then the gross margins, they went from 57 to 58. They got the operating margins. They went from 20 to 23. Everything that you look at about the quarter, about the company, about the fundamentals, all look very, very good. I remember years ago, it didn't look as good as it does now. And I'm glad that we're talking about this one today because it's impressive. They're doing everything right. And we just talked about 3 different companies that maybe they're not doing everything right. Matter of fact, they might be doing a lot of things wrong. But this is a company that absolutely shines, in my opinion. And when you look at that, you say to yourself, even at a 20 PE, it's probably a little bit cheap. So maybe these 52-week highs are going to see new 52-week highs.
Well, like I say, kudos to the chairman here, Pete, because they could have just folded up their tent. I know a lot of the people that made those little dash top boxes and things like that that you'd plug into your cigarette lighter or whatever to give you directions. If that's all they depended on, they would be a buggy whip maker. But that's not all that they did. And obviously they've innovated like crazy and gotten into the sonar and all the rest of it. So kudos to them, Pete. They do a lot with airplanes too. So it's not just below the sea, it's, up in the air as well. All right, Pete, what do you got for your Red Zone Sports today?
John, we're running into March Madness pretty quickly. I know we're not quite there yet. We still got a little bit of a ways to go, but there are 2 teams that have been basically at the top the entire year, right? It's Iowa and UConn. And UConn's been unbelievable. They're the reigning national champions. They've got a lot of things going their way. John, they literally went into last night's game as the unanimous #1 pick. You know what? They got beat by 19 by Creighton, a school that you know a little something about. But it just shows you that in college basketball right now, there's still a lot of folks out there that can play and then play at a high level. And if you're not playing your best game, you better be every single night. Now, they really start to matter for those that are actually good enough even to get there. They really start to matter when you get into March itself. But I thought it would be kind of fun, John, just to pick out 2 different things. One, who do you think actually ends up winning the title this year? Could be whomever you might think. Could be Iowa, could be UConn, could be a lot of different schools out there that are playing really well. I'm going to go with Houston. And the reason I'm going with them is they're athletic as all get out, but they're also the #1 defense in all of college basketball. They hold people to 55 points a game. So all they've got to do is get something north of 55, and that's chalking up another win for them. They've been playing incredibly good basketball. I like the coach. He's been around forever. He's been around a lot of different places, but been around forever. They do a lot of things well, and obviously the fundamentals, because if you play that kind of defense, that means fundamentally you are a sound team. That's who they are. They're the #1 defense in all basketball. That's my kind of That's my pick, at least right now, early. And I know everybody else will be saying, well, I like UConn better. I like this too. Who do you like right now if you just had one team to pick?
Well, with Phi Slamma Jamma, Pete, that's a lot of you are too young to know, but that was one of the many nicknames when Elijah and those guys were playing for the University of Houston.
Drexler.
So I was going to say Houston, Pete, but I'll go with Purdue, and I'm not unhappy trading down to Purdue. Yeah. They're 20-something and 3 also. They're a real force to be reckoned with. And I don't know if the defense is as strong as Houston's, Pete, but I know they can fill up the hoop. So they can score, and they're used to those big, huge, loud arenas. So I don't think the stage is too big for those kids down there in West Lafayette, Indiana. I think that will be a test for anybody that plays them. Maybe they make it through. Maybe they're like, unfortunately, many Purdue teams have sort of faded as they've gone into the NCAAs, Pete. But this is not that same Gene Cady team. I think this is a better team, and he would love to be coaching these kids.
And that big kid Eddie's pretty amazing to watch because he is a monster. He is huge. How about this one, John?
Let me throw one more thing out there, Pete, real quick. Caitlin Clark. So we both know that she broke the scoring record for women in the NCAA. She is amazing, okay? She also, Pete, broke the record for jersey sales of NIL athletes, name, image, and likeness athletes. That's men and women. And how about this, Pete? She's coming up on Pete Maravich's all-time scoring record on the men's side as well. That's how good she is. I know a lot of you saw her last year, especially with this thing, with the hand, and, the LSU player giving it right back to her. Gotta love that. But, kind of like, I can't even see you, you can't see me. But I think she's a great player, Pete. And I love on the women's side to bring her up as just a great example of a student athlete as well.
Yep. And people there, John, love her. I mean, there's a lot of people who say, well, she's kind of arrogant. She's this, she's that, whatever. Maybe they think so, but her teammates don't. And they'll let her take as many shots if she's there because she's that good and they understand exactly who she is. And so, there are certain people that I think should get a little bit of a pass if they've maybe had a cold night and they've still keep shooting. That's what shooters do. And she's been amazing for her career. She ought to stay there one more, though, John, because the payments are much better at that level at NIL than she would be at the WNBA. So how about this?
I'd rather make the NIL money, Pete, any day than that stupid money that she'd make in, basketball. Because Brittany Griner, the girl that we got out of Russia, Pete, she maybe makes $1 million. I mean, this girl is crushing that.
Yeah. It's amazing. She's done well. I had one other thing. I thought, who would be a surprise team, not to win it, but to get to the Final Four? I'm going to throw this one out at you, John. South Florida, my old Tampa group, South Florida, the Bulls. These guys are pretty amazing. How about this? Since early December, they've gone 17-1 after their one loss was on the road against University of Alabama, Birmingham. And the reason they lost that game, the only reason they lost that game, the team figured out that they were having kind of a cold night, so they just kept fouling the living crap out of them. They couldn't hit free throws. But that was just one game. They are on fire. They seem like they've got a lot of the tools that you want to have going into this. They've got great momentum. Now, we'll see, but that's kind of like my dark horse that I've got going into the tournament. Do you got anybody off the top of your head that you're looking at right now?
No, I really don't, Pete. I haven't been watching close enough. So
no Illinois or anybody like that?
That would be a homer call by me, but I don't want to mislead folks into thinking that I really know that one.
All right. How about this one then? Let's jump to not the NFL Combine, although that's coming up. That starts Monday, John, the 26th. So that's going to be pretty exciting for all of us. But HBCU is coming at you. Historic black colleges and universities. Just were down in your neck of the woods, kind of the New Orleans sort of area. They had 47 players who came out of that world. I had one kid I just wanted to point out for you that I think is pretty special. Alcorn State. Jarvion Howard, 5'10", 215, runs a 4.5 40. He has a 36.5-inch vertical. He's got an 11-foot broad jump. And 2 years, he's averaged 5 yards a carry. He's got 19 touchdowns in 2 years as a running back. He also catches the ball pretty well. So they've got their lineup. And for the people who think, well, that's kind of a joke or whatever, no, it's not, because that conference, that world, historic black colleges and universities, well, a guy by the name of Walter Payton, who John knows pretty well. John played at the Chicago Bears with Walter Payton. Walter Payton was John's guy to help get him at CBOE. And then there's Jerry Rice as well. So there are some really, I mean, some of the greatest players ever that getting the opportunity is pretty cool. Every single team was there, John, for these combines. Now they've got to wait till this coming Monday now for the NFL combines, because there's only so many players they can invite. But I think it's pretty cool. How about you?
Oh, yeah, it is really cool, Pete. And I think when you see, like I saw on SportsCenter or someplace, Pete, I saw one of those corners running a 4.36.
Yep.
I believe. That's not the fastest in history. I think it's still Bo Jackson. Even faster than Tyreek Hill was Bo Jackson. And Herschel wasn't far behind either of those two guys. But I thought that was, really lighting them up. But the kid was only 170 pounds.
Yeah.
And you can be a D-back at 170, but oh my God, if you have to tackle somebody big coming through, that could be a very short career, even though you got the speed.
Yeah, it makes it tough on a big tight end or maybe even a running back coming around on the outside. It makes it tougher. John, I got one last thing I was going to run past you. Jimmy Graham. Remember him? He just retired, played a long time in the NFL, 37 years old. There he is playing for New Orleans, was the last team. How cool is this, John? This guy, for charity, and he has never rowed in his life. He's not even been in the boats, but he signed up for it. 1,000 kilometers, 621 miles. He's going to be in there with 3 other guys, I think and one gal, a Navy SEAL, whatever. They're going to go across the Arctic Ocean. I mean, imagine that for a second. You're going across the Arctic Ocean. They're doing it up in Norway, 24 hours of sun. They're not doing it till July of 2025, so he's got a year and a half to prepare. But John, here's a little something that you'll like about Jimmy Graham. He sounds a little bit like you and I, because he likes to live life to the fullest. He's got a pilot's license. He's a cyclist. He's a skydiver. He's a race car driver. And now, even though he's never been in a boat to actually row, he's going to do that. He's got 18 months, basically, give or take, to do it. But they go straight for it. One guy rests for 90 minutes. Then the other 3 make up for it. And they just keep rotating. And it's 24 hours a day until they're done. I mean, it's an amazing thing what these guys are going to do. And I tell you what, all the credit in the world. And he's doing it for charity. So he's got people backing him up that are going to give money to charity for what he's doing out there in the water and just kind of help out. So pretty cool, I thought. And I figured you'd appreciate that, especially because of his personal life and all the crazy things that he's willing to do. Because I know you and I have done a lot of those things too.
We have, but I've never thought about, nor would I do that.
Me neither.
There's all kinds of bad stuff up there, Pete, in that Arctic Circle, not the least of which is the water's so cold that you last about 30 seconds if you go in. Now, granted, I'm sure they'll have safety equipment and all the rest, and boats supporting them. But my gosh, that's not for me. Not for me.
Me neither.
With NVIDIA instead, Pete. Yeah. That's the big risk I'll take this week. Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us, folks. Remember, claim your book, grab your book at itsnotanoption.com. You can grab that and read up on it, and all of a sudden you'll be able to trade like we trade. It's not an option.com. It's a necessity. But the title of the book is the website, It's Not an Option. Go there and you can claim your book. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.